Ever wonder what life would be like after disclosure? We'll be looking at that plus other topics today on the Social Dig. Okay, so picture this. Tomorrow's your day off, you're getting some of the best sleep ever, but for some reason your phone starts vibrating nonstop. Now, half sleep, you turn on Do Not Disturb, you decide to sleep into the next morning, but when you wake up, you freshen up in the bathroom, sit down with a cup of coffee, check your Twitter feed, and there it is. 100 notifications, and the trending topics are hashtag disclosure has happened and hashtag the year zero PD. Now, shocked at what you just read, you almost drop your cup, and all of a sudden this weird feeling of worry and uncertainty come over you as you realize that this is the moment humanity changes forever. Now, obviously, disclosure isn't actually here yet, but if you were able to forecast where humanity goes from here, then what would be your plan and where do we go? Do governments stay intact in the year zero PD? Does poverty still exist? What happens to the war machine? Like Cinderella's chariot turning into a pumpkin at midnight, does the almighty dollar turn into a pile of worthless paper? And if so, with money no longer ruling the world, no longer fueling disagreements, and no longer risking your neck to get it, what roadmap do you think we lay down after that point? It's going to take us all to mentally develop, shape, and mold the new version of humanity. Well, whether it's today, tomorrow, or a few years down the line, disclosure is imminent, and we all need to brainstorm ideas to take humanity forward and elevate our minds to a higher level of consciousness. So today we take a step towards making that plan, laying out some scenarios for life in the year zero PD, life in a post-disclosure world. All right, so life in a post-disclosure world. I mean, what does that even look like? What we'll do today is go over 3 scenarios, starting with worst case scenario. Obviously, you know what that means. I don't need to really tell you what that means. Number 2 would be as is scenario, meaning that things continue on as they were before. And then third, and hopefully the one that we get to go with, is best case scenario. And I'll go over those things in just a moment here. Okay, so worst case scenario. This is a situation where we're totally unprepared for disclosure. However, disclosure happens. Because we're mentally unprepared for that, this is what would ensue afterwards. First of all, the fact that we don't prepare our minds means no one in the world knows what to do. That triggers a negative reaction from the people, and that negative reaction triggers other negative responses. With the chaos ensuing, you saw what happened during the lockdown. It didn't take much at all for there to be complete pandemonium. Pandemonium is the proper word for what we saw. Now, in a situation like that, with pandemonium, then you have rioting across the world, not locally, across the world. With that being said, martial law would have to be imposed in countries across the globe. Imagine that. Countries having to call in their military to police their people. It's not a future that I'm looking forward to. Being that this is a worst case scenario, dictators would use the opportunity, use the distraction to attempt a surprise attack. Because that's all that's on their mind, the powers that be. They want to fight wars. We see it all the time. This would be no different. The moment that the distraction presented itself, you could almost bet some actor is going to step in and attempt to take advantage of that. Now, where does that take us? Either other governments collapsing under the stress, or the country that attempts to surprise attack would be the one trying to create a one world government. Who knows what that would even be like? Obviously, that would lead us to World War III. And then we know what happens with World War III, nuclear winter, and then the end of the world. Okay, so moving on, an as is scenario. This would mean that the way things are currently, we get disclosure, and then after disclosure, things continue on as they were before. So in this scenario, no one bats an eye at the fact that we're not alone. Kind of like we're doing right now with the whole UAP situation. I mean, it's been confirmed by the government that UAPs are in fact real, and may not be from this planet, and people still go on with their normal lives and don't even bat an eye. I'll never, ever understand that. The governments would use the fact that we're not alone to trigger some sort of psyop to get additional funds for warfare. That's what a lot of people out there believe and could possibly be true, especially if we leave things the way they are and we simply just continue on as we were after disclosure. You could almost bet that. Next point, poverty would continue. So with nothing changing, poverty doesn't change. The fact that we worship the dollar means that poverty remains. The next point would be lives continue to be lost behind the dollar. So all the negativity that money creates out there in the world, they say money is the root of all evil. All the negative activity behind money would continue to happen. We have a life-changing moment of disclosure. However, we continue doing the same earthly things that we've been doing the entire time. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't seem like this would be the likely scenario. However, we're going to present it as one, and then you make a decision in the end and leave it in the comments. So the next step, hate continues to thrive. Now, I don't have to really say too much about hate. We know it's a poison. We know we've tried for many years to find ways to extinguish hate. Hate is not a United States thing. It's a global thing. We see it all over the world. That would continue. So all these bad things and bad habits that we picked up as humans throughout all time that we've been living would continue to go on, even after finding out that there are things in the universe that are bigger than us. Imagine that. So the next point, the economic machine continues to grind up the dreams and lives of many. So classism, status. So I'm a worker down here. The quality of life that I get to experience, it doesn't match the person who has status and who is up here. So that continues. Posturing between the world leaders obviously continues. Will always continue unless we do what we're going to talk about here under the best case scenario, which is next. So posturing continues between world leaders, which means weapons continue to be advanced, which leads to what? World War III. World War III leads to what? The end of the world. Not a great scenario, right? Okay, let's move to best case scenario. So in a best case scenario, we got together prior to disclosure. We started brainstorming and thinking of ways that we could progress once and if and when disclosure came. And then once it did come, we had a plan and we proceeded in the most positive way possible. This is what that would look like. Imagine everyone making a contribution to the jobs that were needed. So no longer would a job pay you cash money. You would simply play your role for society's sake. So we would ship crops around the world. Crops grown in Nebraska would be shipped across the world to Africa or somewhere, and vice versa. Just the global trade. Without monetary value, though. Just global trade. Everyone will have an equal opportunity to do things like travel to space or travel anywhere on the globe without restrictions, without borders. With that being said, there are still some things that would have to stay in place in this best case scenario, because you're still going to have people out there that are anti-humanity, and those things should still be punishable in this new scenario. Now, if Congress makes it to the other side, if they exist, then every member should be making suggestions on the best way to benefit humanity. So in this best case scenario, there is no dollar. So instead of voting and focusing on issues that usually come in the form of a bribe or quid pro quo, the temptation to do things against humanity and to do things only for self, that goes away. What a beautiful situation that would be, to have lawmakers that actually are work for the benefit of humanity. That's their job. If that happens, there's nothing to get in the way of the progress of humanity. And there's only time to make the efforts to get us to that point. Now, as far fetched and unimaginable as life after disclosure seems, I can think of another thing that was far fetched and unimaginable. And that was the fact that we're not alone in this universe, that we're being visited by UAP, we're being visited by ET. At one point in time, that was so far fetched and unimaginable, but the stigma has been broken. So, what do we do from here? What is your opinion on that?
Well, first off, Rob, good to see you again. Happy Thanksgiving to
Happy
everybody out there
Thanksgiving,
in our
yes, sir.
audience, and to you and to your family. And, it's a good time of year for gratitude, and we're all feeling gratitude. So
That's right.
um, maybe we'll have something bigger like disclosure to be grateful for by December 31st. So we're still gunning for that. No, first off, I want to say kudos to you for bringing up, for thinking through these post disclosure scenarios. No one's done this yet. And I think a lot of people don't know what would happen, but we know society. We live society. We're both part of society. All of your viewers are part of society. We kind of know what society knows and what they don't know and where they might tend to go. So I like this exercise of thinking about what's going to happen, what could happen, what do we want to have happen. So you laid it out perfectly. That first worst case scenario, yeah. If the world is caught by surprise and people, and maybe most of us who think the world is aware and we're wrong, and the most of the world is unaware, and they're shocked by this, then yes, things are going to spiral out of control quickly. If the world panics, thinks life as they know it is going away, then one bad thing is going to lead to another, as you mapped out. Martial law, then everybody's using their own defenses to protect what they have, and the next thing you know, it's a civil upheaval, and people are shooting each other for food, and it just gets ugly really quick. So that's a bad scenario that I really would like to think that we as humanity have learned enough and grown up enough that we don't react in this way. Because disclosure doesn't crash your religion. Disclosure doesn't crash your nationality or your culture. You're still who you were before. You still speak the same language. You're still from the same part of the world. You can still believe in God. None of that changes. But as we both know, a lot of people in the world don't agree with that. And if disclosure happens, it could throw that all into upheaval. So that one definitely, I certainly hope we don't go down that route. The best case scenario, and I'm kind of going on both ends. I want to end in the middle because I have a little more to say about the as is scenario. So
Yeah.
I think it's the most likely. The
Go
best case
ahead, sir.
scenario is interesting because we know you and I and a lot of your viewers, uh, we all have that wish that once we have the knowledge that we aren't alone in this universe, that it will just turn on that light bulb for everybody. And everybody will now be saying, you know what? Let's put aside our primeval ways where we've been warring with each other for our entire existence, and grow up and finally do the right thing for the greater good of humanity. That scenario would be magnificent. Is it likely right now, given the way society is behaving? Tough to say. But that is ultimately what we want to get to. And it's unclear to me right now if that can happen. It'll certainly happen with a portion of society, a big portion, but will that be enough to bring the rest of society and our government along with it is unclear. Because clearly the government would have to side in with that too, and people emulate their leaders. So if the government is not on board with that, then a lot of the people will shy away.
What's funny to me though is one more for you continue is that
No,
the
keep going.
government is part of society.
Yep.
They're no different than you and me. So it's just funny that we are separated by some fiction invisible line, like they are us, we are them.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, and please don't hesitate to cut me off here because I'm just thinking along the lines because I want to kind of get to the middle. But you're right. The government, you've heard me say this before. Unfortunately, people emulate their leaders. And that, if whether the leaders are right or wrong, it oftentimes happens. And that's unfortunate. So society and humanity needs to think for themselves. Everybody needs to think for themselves now. And by that, I mean they need to recognize the value of disclosure, the fact that the definitive proof that we aren't alone, where we stand in the world or in the universe, and what that really means. What does that mean to everyone, you and me, and all of our earthly neighbors, and what should we really be doing with that? But yeah, if the government isn't on board with that, then a lot of people won't allow themselves to think for themselves. They won't think for themselves, and it's unfortunate. It's just nature of society.
And it's sad, and actually, I could call that like a hive mind, a hive mentality, where you have the worker bees that are just programmed to plug into the system and until they die, and it is definitely sad. And those are the people that we have to wake up, and those are the people that we need to reach out to. So, hopefully, what we're doing here goes towards doing that.
Yep.
That would be the best case scenario.
It would. So that brings us to the as is scenario. And you mapped out, so disclosure drops, the government survives this, people don't freak out. For the most part, they say, yeah, we kind of have been expecting this because we have all been getting prepped. Whether we believe it or not, the government has been dripping this information to us, and the discussions that have been going on about the whole UAP phenomenon, whether it be past or in recent history, have increased to the point where awareness is there. Even, the Pope is talking about it. The religions are posturing themselves to be able to accept the fact that we're not alone in the universe. So there's a very good chance that the as is scenario will play out. Society won't become unhinged upon the news. Now, there's two things that could happen. One is the government keeps doing what they're doing, takes the disclosure and uses it as an opportunity to just ratchet up the status quo, which is we want to have an edge on our adversaries. We want all the tech to ourselves. We're not doing this for the greater good of humanity. We're doing this because we want to have world domination. And that leads to what you described, which is only the path that we're on right now, but it could lead to the same end, which would be, self-destruction, for lack of a better term. The other path that could happen here can possibly be influenced by the people, as we were discussing in the best case scenario, or by the ETs themselves. One of the things that I think about a lot is, do the ETs think about how disclosure is going to play out with this crazy bunch of beings known as as humanity? And do they need to referee this a little bit in order to avoid the worst case or the as is scenario that really doesn't go in the right direction? So if the ETs step in, which who's to say they will or they won't, then they could force the hand of government to say, look, don't use this to build a better bomb, use this to solve the world's problems, and share it with each other. They would have to do this with all the governments. That's one way it could happen. And it's funny, like the old Star Trek series, the whole prime directive of non-interference, right? If we were disclosing our presence to another planet's inhabitants that didn't know that they weren't alone yet, how would we handle it? Would we want to go in and change that society by imposing this fact on them and making them use it in the right way? Or would we just sit back and let them do their own thing? Who knows? But that's one, the ETs might be able to make that happen the right way if they chose to. People, though, the humanity themselves could step up. As we were discussing in the best case scenario, if everybody believes that, hey, we've got disclosure, this is for the greater good, let's use it for the greater good, now they could force the hand of government. And you made me think of something earlier when we were talking about this, or when you were talking about it earlier in the show. We need an ambassador. We need that leader who may not be part of government, be it a group of scientists or a celebrity or somebody that people trust, to step up and say, hey, we have disclosure, let's use it for the right reasons. And that could wake people up, and everybody will be on board and say, okay, Mr. Government, we don't want you to persist in your ways. We want you to do the right thing with this. We want to move toward that best case scenario. So that, I feel like, if people and scientists and ambassadors were to step up such that we had maybe not a majority, but at least a significant critical mass, that could change the whole direction of what the whole outcome of disclosure might be. And it won't be the as-is scenario that basically just amplifies what we're doing right now, where we try to, persist in our world domination and not work with each other. So I don't know. What do you think of that? I mean, do you think that there's hope for that? We kind of have to learn as we go, so to speak. We get the disclosure. We really don't know what to do with it. We kind of go down the wrong path a little way, but then maybe we bring ourselves back to the right path. If you follow where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with it is that the way that I see it, just looking, glass half full sort of thing. Worst case scenario ends with us no longer being here. I mean, and truthfully, any way you spin it. Now, whether worst case scenario, which is you touched on ETs, and I thought about that, but I didn't include it in my initial talk. But I did list what if there was the evil alien agenda. So that's a whole, a whole different issue that would drive us down a path to where potentially we'd end up with the same result. So research here is they're really understanding that history of humanity. We've been at war the whole time. We've been fighting and warring since then till this day. It's a primal trait that we need to get over and get rid of, so that we can take the best case scenario path and live in a world where we hold each other up, build each other up, and we work as a unit, like as one. I was thinking about this the other day in comparison on like an analogy that you could use for where we're at in this. And if you look at Earth is, think of your body as Earth, and think of the cells and the things going on in your body as the citizens of that planet, the inhabitants. Think of your heart as the sun that gives it all life, a living body, and each individual cell, antibody, and all the things within your body have to work together in order to positively benefit you, the person. the body, which is the analogy for Earth. And so I think that it really fits into what the message really is. The only way that we're going to benefit the planet that we're on is by working together. You see what I'm trying to say there?
To keep it healthy. I love it. That's a great analogy. I followed right along with you. Each cell is like a person, or each thing in the body is like a person on the planet. Yeah, you have to work together. The cells and the antibodies and the blood and what have you in the body, all the different cells in the human body have to work together to preserve, grow, and allow the human body to flourish. Same goes for planet Earth, and that's your point. All of the individual contributors, individual
and
cells
I think it's pretty simple.
Make it work. And people need to realize that. And what's happening right now, the leg is fighting the thigh is fighting the right arm, the neck's fighting the chest. It's like we have all these different body parts or parts of the world that aren't getting along. So the body as a whole, the planet as a whole, doesn't thrive.
Exactly.
And that can't persist.
Yes, sir.
We need to get over it. Yeah, we talked about this in the last video a little bit. Humanity's been around for 300,000 years, but we've only been technologically advanced for maybe 200-300 years, right? 250 years, if you want to call it that far. We've got a lot of growing up to do still. A lot of our behavior is still primitive because we were hunter-gatherers and having to engaging in tribal warfare. We're still doing that, just now that our tribes are countries. So it's a lot of our bad behavior is going to be very, very hard to do away with quickly. Disclosure might be that shock that forces more like-minded people like your viewers, what we're discussing about here, where we think, why shouldn't we be doing this for the greater good of humanity? Disclosure might shock more people into adopting that and working toward that end, because that's really where we have to go. That's when we can really become part of the galactic community. And we have to have that mentality and transcend all of our primitive ways and really start to think along those lines. That's really a higher level civilization. They talk about the different levels of civilization in terms of number system, and I won't go through that. I think this was a Michio Kaku thing that he brought up once, where he talked about the different levels of civilization. We're never going to get out of the current level of civilization unless we transcend our old ways of thinking. And disclosure is a means by which we can get to that point quickly. But we have to embrace it in the right way, and we need to use it in the right way and not let it become another weapon of war. And that's kind of how I feel about it. And I think we're going to have to learn as we go a little, but disclosure can certainly bring that shock that might make more of the majority of people more aware of the fact that we have to be working toward the greater good of humanity, the greater good of planet Earth, because we're all brothers and sisters on one planet here. And now when we speak to the ETs, how are we going to speak? We're going to speak as one human race, or are we going to speak as Americans or Africans or Middle Easterners or Russians? What are we going to speak as? We should be speaking as one. And we need to think along those lines. And that's really where we have to go with once we have disclosure, that's where we have to go with it. And we need to, we the people who think along these lines need to force that, because that's really where the goodness is going to come from. We're going to take all of the great things of disclosure and all the tech and apply it to solve the world's problems, not to build a better bomb and be able to conquer your other parts of the world. That's what we need to get past.
And I thought about because I've been doing a lot of thinking, especially with this UAP report still late. I've been doing a lot of thinking about where we go from here. And a thought that popped in my mind was, being that we're faced with this monumental, just game-changing situation that would allow us to direct our path another way. It just makes me wonder, and I guess this is something that I'll end up wanting to talk about on other shows as well. But just getting to know the history of who we were, and maybe that helps awaken people into understanding why we need to take control of where we go from here. Because if you think about it, with the earth being as old as it is, and then our civilization said few 100,000 years, so any previous civilizations that may have risen, it just makes me think, maybe think of it like this, like a bird in the nest. So the egg hatches, the baby bird, the nest is its earth, is its home. And then one day it gets enough nerve to go ahead and leave the nest and fly. So just thinking about previous civilizations that have maybe gotten to the point we're at now, where they had to make a choice in their own future to stop warring and take a path to elevate their civilizations. Did they get to a point to where they were successful? They chose the best case scenario path, became united enough to then leave the planet and travel the galaxy. There potentially, if that's a thing, there could potentially, this could be a jump off point for a lot of civilizations over millions of years who have come the same path we're traveling, and then gotten to the point to where they either took the worst case scenario and they're no longer here, or they took the best case scenario and now they're out there in the cosmos. Think about
Mm-hmm.
that. Think about that. That could be us.
It could be, and it's interesting. There is some historical record that does imply that, like the Atlanteans from Atlantis and a few other things. Some of these civilizations that were there, some destroyed themselves. At least that's what some of the historical record might imply. Others, they don't know what happened to them, right? So maybe those people did transcend their primeval ways and went out and decided to become part of the cosmos and left planet Earth.
Yeah,
Very, very possible.
you would
And
think that it would have, this situation would have had to happen before, with as many planets and galaxies and how many years this planet has been here. It just makes sense.
oh yeah, no, I mean, come on, 4.5 billion years, and humanity's only been around. They first thought it was more like 20,000, 30,000. Now it's 300,000. It's still a blip in the time, in terms of the time, the cosmic clock, right? It's not a very 4.5 billion versus 300,000. I mean, it's tiny. So other planets that are twice as old as Earth, what sort of civilizations have they seen come and go, right?
Right.
The universe is 13.5 billion years old, roughly. We're relative newcomers, right? If you think about it. What about the planets, what about the planets that were at our point now 4 billion years ago? 4
Right.
billion years into 5 billion years into the life of the universe, a planet could have been like us, and they could have been at this stage. Where are they now? Did they destroy themselves, or did they transcend it and move on? There's a lot of talk about that, because even the old Drake equation talks about that, right? There was a factor in the Drake equation about whether or not, how many intelligent civilizations equal are there in the universe. One of the factors in the equation was, does the civilization destroy itself over time? What's the probability of that? And that's, so even Dr. Drake, when he made that equation, he knew that that's a very big possibility. Civilizations may not survive themselves. And with disclosure and where we're at in this point of time in the world, and just 2022 on the cusp of 2023, we have a grand opportunity to choose a path here. And that path either is going to be a path of self-destruction, or it's going to be the path of the greater good of humanity and us transcending and becoming that higher level civilization that we certainly need to become and should be part of. And that's a big deal, and we
It's a
are on
big
that cusp.
deal.
We are on that cusp because we've had the ability to destroy ourselves now for good 70 years, and we need to be mindful because we all know the news. We don't need to talk about that. That threat is constantly there. We've taken some positive steps in the past, but seem to come back around a lot often, and we tend to be repeating history in a lot of ways because we don't learn our lesson for good.
See, and
So
I'm
yeah.
kind of glad you touched on that because the message is that there really is only one way to go, and it's coming together to forge a new path for humanity. And it's kind of perfect and kind of fitting that this video will come out on Thanksgiving, a time where you're going to find a lot of families together. My hope for this would be then for that one person that is pro humanity and is watching this, instead of going out and yelling at the world and trying to recruit from the outside, start with the family member next to you. Start with your uncle that you haven't seen in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Start there, build from within, let everybody understand and know why it is so important that they wake up and take this pivotal point in time seriously. And I think that might be a way that you could affect the movement
Mm-hmm.
in a quick fashion.
I love it. I love it because as you're describing that, I'm thinking about the Thanksgiving dinner table. You're at the table. You're seeing the relatives that you don't see very often during the year. They ask you how you're doing. You tell them about your school, your job, your family, whatever else, which is all great. And then when you're done, you say, I'm also grateful today for what I think the future holds for humanity if we all work together and drive toward the greater good of everybody on the planet, not just everybody in our own country or in our own backyard. I have a vision of, I have this vision, and I'm, happy to share it here with my family. And I hope everyone else, my hope is that everyone else in the world adopts the same vision, because the world will be a better place. And no one at that table will be able to, will disagree with that, right? How could they?
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
wants that, but not everybody thinks about it. So
Right.
good
Right.
point you bring up. That's the call to action for this video.
Mhm. That's
Is
right.
share with your family your belief that the world can be a better place, and working together can bring about the greater good. And with disclosure, with technology, with whatever it is comes our way, we need to apply it in that way, not apply it to have an edge on our adversaries or an edge on our neighbors. That never ends well. We already know how that
Yeah.
usually ends and what that
Yeah.
leads
Just
to.
you pose your family member with the 3 scenarios that we talked about today.
Mm-hmm.
Let them be the judge of which path they would choose if they had to make that choice. Let them know that what it might be like to live in a post-disclosure world. Maybe it's something that they're totally agree with, never thought to think about, never thought to talk about. And then they go home and continue the conversation with friends at work.
Yep.
And
They think about it.
Yeah, and then it spreads. So hopefully that's what the message is. So we jumped into a lot of stuff. Disclosure is heavy on my mind right now, like I say, especially with the UAP being late and just the audacity of the people who are holding it back to just really just look at you with disdain when you ask where's the report that was promised on October 31st. So I think everybody, I think that being the case that they did that. Now, had they released the report on time, maybe disclosure is still important, but maybe it's not the driving topic right now. So it's kind of a gift that they did that, because I think that riled up a lot of people in the community and has a lot of people ready to stand up and ask for answers. I watched it was the briefing the other day. Did you catch it, where the reporter asked who was it? I don't remember her position, but she asked her, when was the report coming out? Why has it been late? And when we have our journalists out there fed up as well, we then you can see that the movement is starting to go, but we really need to kick this thing off a lot faster.
Absolutely. I think that the government is trying to reel it back in, and the only thing that's going to make the difference in 2023 is that Whistleblower Protection Act that's in the legislation. It's still yet to pass. We talked about that in the last video, but should pass. And we the people. If the government isn't going to give us the evidence of disclosure, then hopefully we the people can produce that evidence, because we all have access to the tech to do it now. And there's a lot of movements going on that could, besides Avi Loeb and the Galileo project, we've got the ability to bring that evidence to light. So, to your point, I think the anger that people might be having with the government, we the citizens, because they haven't been following the law and didn't release the report on time, that anger is also going on inside the government and with the potential whistleblowers. So that person who may work for that black budget private industry that is working on the alien tech, who is fed up with what's going on and wants the information out there, is now motivated more than ever by seeing that the government is backpedaling. And so next year, there may be a few people who come out and let everybody know what they know, because they're fed up with the fact that the government isn't following through as they said they would. So maybe we'll see a few things pop up.
I'm still hedging my bet for December 31st, 2022. Anything can happen. We still got a month left. Let's go. Whistleblower, pilot, whoever can come out and bring out some pertinent information. Randall Nickerson, you said you had something. James Fox, you did as well.
Yep.
Gary Nolan
said there was something about coming.
Some things. So guys,
make it happen.
Let's get to that post-disclosure life.
Let's make 2023 the year that we have to start migrating ourselves toward that greater good, one human family. We need to make the world a better place, and use what we learn in disclosure as the reason for us to finally become that member of the galactic community. That's the worthy member of the galactic community.
And I think it's fitting that we're both on this pro-humanitarian mindset and looking out for the greater good of humanity. You're on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. We got the country covered from end to end. So I'll start coming your way, you start coming my way, and on the way we'll meet in the middle, and we'll push this disclosure all the way through. Like I say, I'm so glad you came back through. This is open door. Like I said before, you're part of that. You're part of the family here. And like I said, walk through when I go to my family member house, I just walk straight through the door. I don't knock. If the door's unlocked, I'm coming in, and I expect you to do the same thing, sir.
Well, thanks, my brother. Appreciate that. No, I'm happy to be here. Happy to contribute, and love talking with you about all this stuff. We're like-minded, and all of your viewers that are feeling the same thing appreciate it. Hearing it from a couple different viewpoints. So no, it's all good. And
definitely.
With that, man, happy Thanksgiving you and yours and all the viewers. It's been awesome. It's been a decent year. We all have a lot to be thankful for. Let's take the time to do that, but keep fighting the fight and moving in the right direction.
Same here, Mattel. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. Happy Thanksgiving to the viewers out there. And if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, happy holiday or happy day, happy disclosure day, however you want to spin it. Just take this message, start with the person next to you, and let's get this thing going on. Like I said, thanks for coming through, Mattel. Here at the Social Dig, we push the pro-humanitarian message. I'm going to get you out of here, and then I'm going to get out of here as well.
All right, man. Take care.
Yes, sir. You too.
All right. And once again, it's time for a part of the show I call What's the Social Dig? And today's topic is humanity's chance to reboot. Now, we've read about times in human history that we were faced with adversity, pivotal points in time that in every case challenged society's belief systems. This is another one of those times in humanity's history. Actually, the most pivotal time is now, and we should be grateful to have the opportunity to alter the future direction of humanity, and also we should not take this responsibility lightly. Now, we've warred with each other, advanced weapons to hurt, and worse. And it all started from a stone. The same stone we used as a tool to better the quality of life of humanity. Funny or not so funny that we took something that was meant to enrich lives and repurposed it to something that instead takes lives. Sad part about that is that currently we are still in the same cycle of finding ways to hurt each other more efficiently. Today, I gave you 3 scenarios on what paths humanity can take post-disclosure, and sadly, but also not surprisingly, 2 of the 3 scenarios ends with the end of life, the extinction of humanity. But one of those scenarios doesn't have an end, and actually has optimism for a future of promise, self-reflection, self-discovery as we elevate humanity and truly embrace a full potential of us as conscious beings. Then and only then can we stop looking down at our phones and start reaching for the stars. Well, thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and notification bell so we can meet again and help push humanity forward. Well, that's the Social Dig for today. I am Mr. Rob G, your partner in disclosure. Take care of each other.